are some stories that refuse to fade. Stories whispered in hushed voices, retold across generations, and etched into the nightmares of those who dared to witness them. Tonight, I'm going to take you deep inside 3 of the most disturbing tales ever told. Each one is more than just a rumor. They are accounts that have left scars, both physical and psychological, on those involved. But remember, what you're about to hear isn't just entertainment. These are stories rooted in truth, and truth, as we know, can be far more terrifying than fiction. The first story begins in a small, forgotten town where a crumbling house sits at the end of a broken road. Locals call it the house that never sleeps. For decades, no one dared to step inside after sunset. According to witnesses, strange lights flickered in its windows at night, even though no electricity had run through the house in years. Those brave or foolish enough to enter often emerged pale, trembling, and sometimes never spoke of what they saw. On a cold autumn night, a group of curious friends decided to test the legend. They carried cameras, flashlights, and more courage than sense. As they approached the decaying front door, the air turned heavy, pressing against their lungs. The silence was absolute except for the faint sound of breathing, but none of them were speaking. When they finally pushed the door open, it creaked like a scream. The air inside smelled of mold, rot, and something else, something like copper. Blood. The floorboards groaned beneath their weight. The friends pointed their flashlights around, revealing collapsed furniture, torn wallpaper, and deep scratches carved into the walls. Something about the scratches seemed intentional, like words, though no one could decipher them. One of them joked nervously, "Looks like the walls were trying to talk." But their laughter stopped when the walls did answer. A low moan echoed from upstairs. It wasn't the house settling, it was deliberate. They climbed the staircase, each step screaming under their weight. At the top, they found a long hallway lined with doors. Every door was shut except one, slightly ajar, with a faint light spilling out. Inside that room stood an old rocking chair. It moved slowly, back and forth, though no one touched it. In the chair sat a shape dark, hunched, with glowing eyes staring straight at them. One of the friends tried to speak, but his throat seized. The figure whispered their names, one by one. How could it know their names? The friends bolted as they sprinted down the stairs. The house itself seemed to fight against them. The door slammed shut, windows rattled, and shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. By sheer force, they managed to break the door open and stumble into the night. Behind them, the house stood silent. The rocking chair had stopped. The whispers had ended. But one thing remained etched into each of their minds. The voice inside the house hadn't been threatening. It had been inviting, almost as if it wanted them to come back. The second story begins in a quiet countryside home where a young girl named Emily received an unexpected gift for her birthday, a porcelain doll. It wasn't new. Its paint was chipped, the dress torn in places, and its glassy eyes seemed lifelike, as if they were waiting for her to blink first. Her parents had bought it from an old antique shop, claiming it had character. Emily wasn't sure. She placed the doll on a shelf in her bedroom, where it watched her silently from the shadows. At night, Emily swore the doll would move. She told her parents, but they dismissed it as an overactive imagination. That was their first mistake. One night, Emily woke to the sound of something scratching against the floorboards. When she sat up, she saw the doll wasn't on the shelf anymore. It stood in the corner of the room, facing the wall. Terrified, Emily screamed. Her parents rushed in, only to find the doll back on the shelf, perfectly still. They scolded her for making things up, but Emily noticed something her parents didn't. Small, white footprints leading from the corner of the room back to the shelf. Days later, Emily told her mother that the doll had started whispering to her at night. The voice was faint, like someone speaking through a wall. When asked what it said, Emily hesitated. Finally, she whispered back, "It tells me secrets about you." That night, Emily's mother awoke suddenly, her heart racing. From her daughter's room, she heard the sound of two voices, Emily's soft giggle and a second voice, raspy and unfamiliar, answering her. When she entered, Emily was asleep. The doll was lying beside her in bed, its head turned toward the door, smiling. One stormy night, Emily's father heard a loud crash from her room. When he entered, the window was wide open, rain pouring in, curtains whipping violently. Emily was gone. On the bed sat the doll, its porcelain face smeared with mud, its dress damp from the storm. In its tiny porcelain hands was something Emily always wore, her necklace. Emily was never found. Some say the doll claimed her. Others say the doll waits for another child. The antique shop where it was bought closed down shortly after, and the owner disappeared. No trace of Emily or the shopkeeper was ever discovered, but locals whisper that the doll still exists, passed from hand to hand, carrying its curse with it. This story doesn't begin in a haunted house or with a cursed object. It begins in the mind within a dream that should have been harmless. 3 friends, all living in different parts of the city, began to share the same nightmare. At first, they didn't realize it. Each dreamed of a vast, empty hallway, endless, with peeling wallpaper, flickering fluorescent lights, and a distant hum. They walked for what felt like hours, always searching, never finding. But the strange part, when they spoke later, each described the exact same hallway, the same wallpaper, the same flickering lights. It wasn't coincidence, it was something far darker. As nights went on, the dream grew worse. The friends began to notice a shadow at the far end of the hallway. It never moved, it never approached, but every time they looked away, it seemed closer than before. They described it as a figure without a face, tall, thin, dressed in something that looked like rotting fabric. Its head tilted unnaturally, like it was listening. One night, one of the friends tried calling out to it. The figure didn't answer. Instead, every single light in the hallway flickered and went out except one. And under that one dim light, the figure was standing. One of the friends woke up in the middle of the night to find mud on his bedroom floor. Another swore she saw the hallway wallpaper peeling through the walls of her apartment. And the third, he woke up with scratches down his arm. Each friend admitted that the dreams no longer felt like sleep. They felt like visits. The hallway wasn't just in their minds, it was reaching out, pulling them in, piece by piece. When they met to discuss it, they noticed something chilling. All 3 of them had the same new scar carved into their skin. It wasn't random, it was a symbol. The same symbol etched into the peeling wallpaper of the hallway. The last time they spoke was on a stormy night. They made a pact to try and stay awake, to resist sleep at all costs. But exhaustion is a predator, and one by one, they drifted into unconsciousness. And there they were again. The hallway, the peeling walls, the flickering lights, and the figure closer than ever. This time, it moved. Slowly, it raised an arm and pointed at them. Then the walls began to bleed. floor. The humming sound grew deafening, almost alive. The friends screamed, but no sound came from their mouths. The figure finally spoke, though its voice wasn't a whisper, it was inside their heads. You are already mine. The next morning, 2 of them never woke up. The third was found screaming in his bed, eyes wide open, muttering the same phrase over and over. The hallway doesn't end. These stories may sound like nightmares, but to those who lived them, they are all too real. A house that calls you back, a doll that never stops watching, and a dream that doesn't end when you wake up, whether you believe them or not. Remember that some doors, once open, never close again, and some nightmares don't end when the morning comes. They only begin. If you've stayed with me this far, beware tonight's dreams, because once you've heard the story, sometimes the story hears you back. Follow my channel Fear Files Explained and subscribe to get more horror explained videos.